All right. Hey, folks. So today's topic is going to be fasting. And I want to warn you guys off a particular mistake that I see a lot of people making when they fast. Now, it's 2022. You've probably heard of fasting. And nowadays, the connection between fasting and bodybuilding is pretty well established. We have some pretty prominent guys in the industry fasting. We have Hollywood movie stars talking about fasting, like um, The Rock has talked about how he fasts. John Meadows, before he passed on, he talked about fasting quite a lot. And there are a lot of people who discuss fasting. So nowadays, fasting in bodybuilding is not an alien concept. So it's much more mainstream. However, the problem is that the fasting community as a whole is still relatively in its infancy. It hasn't been, much like the entire diet industry really, is relatively much in its infancy, and it hasn't really been fleshed out. So I see this common mistake being made over and over again, and people aren't really talking about it. So I want to bring it to your attention in the hopes that I can help you when you next are on a fat loss phase utilizing fasting. So let's bring up the show notes and I'll give you what I've got. So just in terms of a preemptive summary, just to let you know out and out right now what I'm talking about, what is the mistake that people make? The main mistake that I see people making is they have very strict views on how they should eat during the course of a fat loss phase when they're dieting. And this spills over onto fasting, and it's reinforced by the fasting community as a whole on, say, Reddit and all that. There's a lot of very zealous fasters out there who have these arbitrary rules about how you should fast. And all that does is it actually contributes more to failure than it does to success, because success is usually associated with flexible dieting attitudes. Failure is usually associated with rigid attitudes towards a diet or a dieting practice like fasting. And then when you can't do it and you're sick and tired, you fall off and that's it. Binge city, put back on all the weight. So my preemptive summary is that diet fluidity applies when it comes to fasting as well. You should fast as and how you feel like. And when you're comfortable with fasting, you should be able to slip in and out of different types of fasts. Like all these different fasts, they have different names, but the reality is it's all just not eating. It's not any more complicated than that. So you should be able to flip in and out of dieting depending on how you feel on the day, fitting into your schedule. So let's crack on with the main part of the video. So firstly, let me just cover again what diet flexibility actually means. And we need to know this because being flexible, having a flexible attitude towards dieting is highly correlated with dieting success, both in the short term and for long term, keeping the weight off. So on my channel, I do talk quite a lot about more extreme forms of fat loss, like VLCDs, very low calorie diets, and fasting. But that's all within the confines of actually having diet flexibility. You can have an extreme form of fat loss, but as long as you have a flexible attitude towards that, it's generally correlated with more success. And for anyone who wants to argue that, that is well established in the research now. So either bring up a citation or just be quiet because it's well established. So flexible dieting is not about fitting a pizza into your macros. That's moronic. Like if you fit a pizza into your macros, congratulations, well done. But that's not flexible dieting. That you're still on plan, because by definition, you'll fit it into your macros. But what about one day where you wake up and you think to yourself, I don't want to fit this pizza into my macros. I just want to eat at maintenance today. I want to eat higher than maintenance. I want to eat what I like today. What about one of those days? Well, one of those days is not only possible, but it should be encouraged, because you shouldn't feel discouraged if to stick to your diet and continue your diet, you just bring your calories back up to maintenance that day or even higher. Where that's not what's causing people to fail diets and regain weight. What's causing people to fail diets and regain weight is not having one day of extra calories. It is feeling like a failure and then just going off the diet and binging for weeks and weeks. That's why people fail diets, due to poor views around diet flexibility. So I know so many coaches and PTs who still think Flexible dieting is being able to fit whatever you like into your macros. And it's so naive because you're still on the plan, because your plan is a macro-based plan. That's not going off plan. That's not being flexible. Being flexible is viewing your diet as a phasic moving process, which has some periods of higher calories, some periods of lower calories, some periods of medium calories, responding to how you feel on the day, honoring your hunger. So teaching clients how to move out of a deficit for a meal or a day or a weekend or even a week is all part and parcel of what I do with my fat loss clients. At no point do we say, this is your plan, stick to it, come hell or high water. Because as soon as you do that, when they encounter some difficulties, they will feel the pressure of not feeling in control. Ultimately, they'll break, they'll feel like a failure, and then they'll just eat everything. So it's all about staying in control and viewing the diet as a phasic process, which you don't have to be in a deficit all the time. And if you aren't, it can be part of your plan. It's not a failure. That's what messes people up. That's what true flexibility is. Like, okay, I wake up today. I don't feel like dieting today. I don't feel like being in a deficit, so I'm not going to. That's fine. Tomorrow or whenever I feel like it, I'll get back on my deficit, but I've not failed because I've made it part of my plan. As soon as people feel like they've failed, that's when the guilt kicks in. That's when they overeat, and that's when they go off the rails. And that is what keeps people fat. That's really important. I really hope you guys take that on board because it's massively important. Now, fasting as a community. So getting back to fasting. Now, fasting as a niche community, it still lacks sort of moderation. It still lacks these more well thought out ideas around diet attitudes. It hasn't fully matured yet. And as a result, you get a lot of people within fasting communities who push you to go harder when you fail. So to be more strict, to be less flexible, to just get back on the fast, to fast for longer this time, to fast stricter this time, all that stuff. I'm telling you the exact opposite. I'm saying you need to go easier, not harder, if you failed on fasting before as part of your fat loss regimen. You have to try and avoid the rubber band effect. Like fasting zealots will say things like this: if you're not losing weight, fast longer and harder next time. They'll say, just keep calm and fast on. They'll say things like no calorie-free drinks, which is just so stupid. I'm saying do the opposite of that. Like, if you're not losing weight, more than likely you're eating more than your deficit in the combined time that you are eating and the time where you're not eating. So the solution is not to fast for longer. The solution is to pull back a little bit because you're getting the rubber band effect. You're stretching yourself, and then you're ravenously hungry, so you're eating way more. Maybe take a bit of a break. Have a smaller fasting window. Take a week off. Go eat at maintenance. It's all part of the plan because remember, you are in control. Diet zealotry will not serve you in general dieting, and it definitely won't serve you in fasting because you can create such a deficit. So don't follow these, what are basically well-meaning idiots who are in the space. And this is not just a fasting community. This is the general diet community as well, who will say things like this, who will just encourage you to go harder. I'm encouraging you to go easier. Go with the flow. And if you wake up one day and think to yourself, I don't feel like fasting today, or I don't want to do this particular fast, don't do it. Change to something else or go back to maintenance. So you have all of these different methods of fasting, and they all have different names, like OMAD, 2MAD, 16-8, 12-12, eat, stop, eat, 5-2, lean gains, extended fasting. They're all basically just you not eating, but they all have different names. And as soon as you attach a name to something, there is a community behind it. And as soon as there's a community behind it, you have people who just make allegiance with these fasting protocols and say, this is my life. I'm OMAD. I'm the guy who does OMAD. I'm 1 meal a day, all day, every day. That's it. This is how I live, because they talk about how it's a lifestyle. It's not a diet. I've got news for you guys. Being on a fat loss diet is not a lifestyle. Get that out of your head right now. It's a diet. It's a phase you're in, and then you're going to go back to eating at maintenance. If you have such a strict view on dieting, normally those people who have the most strictest view on dieting are basically trying to convince themselves that this is the right way. And if they have an audience, it's even worse because they're just putting their disorder out there to their audience and making them more disordered. It's very easy to spot. But anybody who says that this is like their way of life, anybody who says a diet is their way of life should not be listened to, point blank, because it's not. It's a temporary thing. And it should be a temporary thing. And then you should go back to a more regular way of eating. So my point with this is you can slip between any one of these methods. Like, okay, let's say you generally end the day with one meal, and that's what you've been doing. But today you fancy breakfast. Fine, have breakfast. Go back to a regular day. Perhaps your eating window can be in the morning, and then you can fast at night and go straight to bed. Perhaps you were supposed to do a 24-hour fast, but actually you feel pretty good, so you just skip dinner and it turns into a 36-hour fast. Take it when it's there. When it's not there, pull back. That way you don't have to align yourself to any one diet and be like, I'm the OMAD guy. You don't need to do that. You can just view fasting as a tool in your toolbox, as part of your repertoire, as just another part of you reaching your end goal, which is the fat loss you desire. You must be able to stay in control. Don't let the diet control you. You control how you diet. It's all to get to your goal. It's not just to have this arbitrary form of fasting or dieting as a whole. You must remain in control. So all of this that I'm telling you is designed to give you agency, independence, and freedom to fast or not. And this is exactly what I say to my clients. I set the parameters, but at any point, if you don't feel like it that day, don't do it. My clients are all motivated people who want to achieve their goals. Just because John doesn't do it on a Tuesday because he's got a lot of work on, he's got a lot of stress, he's not slept very well, doesn't mean he's a failure. And at no point am I ever going to say that, because he's not. He's just building. If he goes back to maintenance, he's going to build some reserves for the next push. Just do it. Be active in the process of your fasting and your dieting. Push it when you can, pull back when you want to. I promise you that correlates to better outcomes, not worse outcomes. So when all of these fasting zealots and all these diet zealots are telling you to go harder and harder and harder, I'm telling you to pull back. If you've snapped and regained a bunch of weight, your entire process was wrong. You probably went about it too hard in the first place. You probably need a break. You probably didn't feel in control. You probably felt like a slave to the diet, like this is something I have to do. If you don't feel completely excited about your diet, you don't feel in control, don't do it. And this is especially true for fasting because it's such an extreme form of caloric restriction. You must remain in control. So in terms of my concluding thoughts, don't align yourself to any one fasting method. The end goal is to hit that body fat, body weight, time frame, holiday, wedding target. Okay. The end goal is to hit the target. You hit your goal. The end goal is not to be the OMAD guy, the lean gains guy. That's not the goal. Nobody wants that. The goal is to hit your body weight target, your physique target, your body fat target. Don't be a slave to any one method. And if you have seen yourself just fail diets and regain all the weight, consider that the approach may well have been too strict for you to adhere to. You may need to go easier. You may need to build in more times where you're eating at maintenance and eating more food. One of the really common mistakes is people will do things like OMAD, where it's one meal a day, and they'll have a meal which is 600 or 700 calories. Before they know it, over the course of a week, they've amassed a deficit of some 10,000 calories across the week. And then they're wondering why they're now binging and really hungry and can't control their appetite. It's because you're next to starvation. And then they get all these people in Reddit saying, oh, you should just fast harder next time. You shouldn't. You should fast easier. Build in some times where you're eating a lot of food. Fasting should not be the norm. Massive calorie deficits should not be the norm. Fasting should be the one-off. This is why when I do fast, I quite like things like 24-hour fasts every now and again, or alternate day fasting every now and again, rather than just a massive time window where you can't eat every single day, which just drives down the time you can eat and drives down your caloric intake. Works great for fat loss temporarily, but the rubber band effect, you'll snap back. Also understand that dieting, regardless of fasting, dieting is not a lifestyle. It is a temporary phase. You drop the fat, or you drop a predetermined amount of fat this run, then you pull back, you hit maintenance again. Even if you got a lot to lose, let's say you got 100 pounds to lose, fine. Go ahead and drop 20, then pull back, go to maintenance for a bit. You're going to have to learn how to eat at maintenance at some point, so you may as well start to practice now. Rest up for another 1 month or two, then go back and drop another 20 pounds, and then rest up. These are phases. Fat loss is not a lifestyle, doubly so when it comes to fasting. And I wanted to highlight this because the fasting community as a whole tends to be more zealous as a whole than the general diet community, because it's just so niche within the dieting mainstream. So hopefully that was a valuable message, because I know a lot of people do like fasting, and also a lot of people don't really still understand what flexible dieting actually is. Again, it's not the ability to fit a pizza into your macros. It is the ability to view your diet as a phasic process where you can be on a deficit, but you can also flip to maintenance on that day, or even a surplus. You must respond to your hunger. You must respect your hunger. Right, folks, I'm going to call it there. For dieters, I personally think this is a very important video. So hopefully you've think